This is the first episode of season 2 of the ThinkData Podcast in partnership with Dataworks. And what better way to kick things off than to welcome Amit Govrin to the show. Amit is the co-founder and CEO of Kubiya, the world's first DevOps virtual assistant that is powered by AI. He is fresh off the back of multiple events, multiple interviews. They launched back in May 2022 and since then have experienced rapid growth and, in his own admission, a huge amount of interest from the world of cloud and DevOps. It's really good to have you on today. I appreciate, obviously, tomorrow's Thanksgiving, so thanks for taking time out to speak. It was, as I kind of alluded to there, you've launched only about a year and a half ago now. Would be really interested to understand the kind of backstory, because I know you spent some time at Amazon. You launched Kubiya, as I say, May last year. So would you mind kind of bringing everyone up to speed on who you are and kind of ultimately led you to launch Kubiya?
Sure. Pleasure to be on, Alex. Thanks for having me here. My story as a founder is actually not that much different than a lot of other founders. I found myself after a stint in a previous a couple startups, taking, if you may, a couple years off in the corporate world in AWS, where I was essentially leading the DevOps and DevSecOps partnerships for AWS. For the tier one partners, you can think about all the who's who of the industry, the Datadogs, HashiCorps, GitHubs, GitLabs, Sneaks of the world. I was there, really providing that connective tissue between the partners, the go-to-market, the product teams, and of course, their needs and where they need the most amount of support within AWS, which is really an organization of itself. It's an enterprise that you could have full-time work just trying to navigate internally. So I was there as a connective tissue to try to go and bring to market these industry leaders and help them on ramp. I was seeing a lot of, I'd say, challenges that were repeating themselves. And I won't name names. It's more about the concepts that we're coming across. We need more native integration into EKS, into ECS, into some of these native AWS services help us. Why can't our customers have an easier onboarding experience or an easier, exchange between our respective services? And I was seeing this as being a common theme and common thread between how are we getting to this point where the best of breed and the industry-leading DevOps companies who invented the world of configuration management, automation, and so forth, they're still challenged by the same issues everybody else is, which is the end user experience. So where everybody was looking to solve, if you may, one side of it, which is automation, the end user experience was still pretty much lacking. That's a thesis we brought with us, or I started carrying with me. On the other side, when I was connected with my co-founder Shaked, who's a CTO, he was actually solving much of the same issues on his own in his previous company in Bluevine, a fintech unicorn that was essentially a very lean operation, 200 plus engineers for about 4-person platform team, which Shaked was leading. And the issue he was experienced from his end, 5 sites, 4 time zones. How can he go and provide all of these self-service requests that were coming in? Give me access to this cluster, troubleshoot this for me, give me permission to this application, help our production is down. Think about all these problems that repeat themselves, but only on a larger scale. And he was getting very frustrated on his end, needing to go and to provide service across the globe, essentially, follow the sun. Every day his job was stretched to 18, 20 plus hours. So on his own accord, the best thing that happened to him at the time is he caught COVID, so he could work from home for a few weeks. So that gave him that gave him some time to effectively think about the problem set and how does he scale himself in a way that doesn't compromise his personal life. Essentially copy himself as a form of a chatbot in Slack. So he can extend that to his team. Someone copied over, say, 1,000 Jenkins jobs in terms of his internal automations into an easy way to self-service in Slack. And then anytime somebody in the organization came to him for any type of request, similar to what we discussed, he would essentially go and throw the bot at them. And if it didn't exist, he'd go and create it. So that was essentially the initial concepts that carried him forward. And when we came together, that thesis really married each other. Number one, this is more than just a one organization or one enterprise issue. And we know how to solve it. Now let's go and solve it for a much wider range of companies and use cases. So that's where the initial thought came around back in 2022. We called ourselves a DevOps virtual assistant. But again, this was early on, prior to large language models actually becoming a commodity, if you may. It was still early experimentation. So we're still working with GPT-2 and 3.5 in early preview mode and trying to see how we can go and make use of large language models. Our initial thesis all along was create a very easy automation experience using large language models to essentially create, convert your words into workflows. Essentially a next generation workflow automation concept. We came to the world announcing ourselves in KubeCon in Detroit of last year as Siri for DevOps. For no other reason, because nobody understood what conversation I actually was.
When you heard Siri,
so we said, Thanks Siri, you could talk to it, but it's for DevOps functions. And of course, 45 days later, OpenAI introduced ChatGPT to the world, and that was it, right? Overnight, 1 million people understood exactly what conversational AI was, the easy experience of interacting with an intelligent machine. And that's where we already had all the battle scars of how to go and rein in large language models, create rule-based and scaffolding around this so you could actually have an expected outcome. Because I think one of the biggest issues that people haven't really figured out yet, especially people who are relatively new into the world of large language models, is it's not enough just to go into to summarize text or to get some form of image created. If you're a creator in a creator economy, that's great. The more hallucinations, the better it is, I guess, for your artwork, but not for an expected outcome of an enterprise. Enterprises, especially our audience, platform engineers, DevOps, DevSecOps, they need an expected outcome. They need a consistent expected outcome on one hand, but still to benefit from all of the good that large language models can do for you. And that's where we married both worlds. Platform engineering on one hand, and virtual assistants, essentially powered by large language models. And we've created the world's first experience of a bidirectional exchange between the users and their engineering platforms in a way that it feels very much like interacting with the person on the other end.
Well, I really appreciate kind of the detail you've gone to there. I've been fortunate enough to obviously see the product, and what I will say is afterwards we will make sure we reference and tag some demos and videos, because we have a lot of kind of infrastructure, cloud, DevOps, or curious minds would be interested to see that. And I'm really interested to dig on that kind of journey as a founder, because you're obviously coming from, and I know you've been involved in startups before and in different kind of reiterations, but going back to kind of when you conceived, Kubiya, and you were looking at what this business could become. It's obviously Siri for DevOps, and the timing with Gen AI was kind of maybe more luck than judgment, but obviously it gathered a lot of momentum. But what were the kind of first steps you took when you were looking at Kubiya as a potential business? Because obviously it's a great product, but then obviously trying to commercialize that is obviously a whole different challenge, I guess.
I'm going to answer it differently than how you asked it. I'm going to start with why create a startup. I think maybe to my benefit, this isn't my first startup, so I have the benefit of all the battle scars from previous startups and what went right and what didn't. And I think any founder looking to found any type of company especially in a Gen AI space, I will say. It's not just enough to show a cool demo or to show uh, something that looks next generation or far-fetched. It's solving the problem
Mm.
first. What problem are you looking to solve? And that's where you need to really dig deeper. You need to needle into it and see, is this problem imminent and big enough for an organization to drop everything they're doing? Are these one of the top 3 pains they're experiencing? And go from there. And if you're not hitting on that keynote of what are the top couple use cases they're looking to solve for, especially in an economy like today, it's going to be really hard to really create a business out of it, whether it's a down economy or an up economy, whether it's a bear or a bull market. I guess if it's a bull market, it's easier to get more tools in there that are ancillary to the peripheral to the main problems. But at the end of the day, if you're not concentrating on solving a real problem, no amount of cool tech and cool demos will remedy what you're actually trying to do. And I think that's where the biggest issue that I was looking to solve is the issue of self-service for platform engineering and DevOps. All along, that was a thesis that hasn't changed, actually, just because we're now using agent framework as opposed to the earlier versions of GPT-2 and 3.5 doesn't change the thesis that we're looking to have a better end user experience that will essentially go and be the catalyst for adoption of these organizational tools, because automation wasn't the answer. And that's kind of where we're looking to solve for the hard problem, if you may. Technology is just an enabler for that.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, it's kind of a unique perspective, but as you rightly said, you kind of have gained those kind of battle scars for your other ventures. And you're right about the kind of, sometimes the market will dictate the pace at which an organization grows, and obviously we're in a slightly turbulent, uncertain time right now, but I think things are becoming a bit more certain. But when you were looking at scale, what did scale mean to you? Was that about personnel? Was it about getting the customers in first? Because you obviously got that kind of chicken and egg, haven't you? You kind of need the customers to then scale, but equally you scale too quickly, the customers, you're going to burn through a lot of cash. So kind of how did you approach that?
It's interesting you asked that question, because when I got started, it was really right when Putin came in to Ukraine, and there was a lot of uncertainty created from the war in Ukraine. And the markets were going downwards very sharply. And we just closed our round, also in a pretty turbulent and tough economy. And we still didn't know where the bottom's going to be. We still didn't know what the future will hold in terms of the economy. Is it going to continue to spiral? Is it going to stabilize? Is interest rate going to be under control? And I think that's where the world of uncertainty forced us to think in steps. So the first step was, let's go ahead and create an MVP, or at least an initial thesis that we can go and share with our customers. And let's go and validate the thesis and make sure that we're solving their problems. Number 2, let's go ahead and educate the market. This is, mind you, this is pre-ChatGPT, so conversational AI was not that trivial to anybody. When we're trying to talk to people, you could just go in Slack and provision an environment and create permissioning and so forth. People are saying, why would I do that? I can go into my CLI, I can go into AWS console, I can go and do this myself as essentially a practitioner. We said, well, that's creating context switching. That's burning cycles. That's still not solving for your end users and needing to get answers to their common questions, RTFM, if you may. So one of the biggest challenges that we're trying to solve in many respects was, how do we go and get people's concepts around conversational AI, language as a new user interface, go and leverage it over the chat platforms you're already using, and minimize context switching and minimize the tools that you're interfacing with. And when we first came out, we actually started hiring a marketing team and optimizing for thought leadership, because we didn't know how much we're going to have to leverage. We even invested in Gartner early on for no other reason, because we needed to get into the analyst's mind share and trying to get the concepts that we're bringing to the table out there. Everything changed the minute OpenAI released ChatGPT. All of a sudden, market education wasn't needed anymore. If anything, you need to rein in on the noise created by all of these, I'd say, early or later entrants who are just creating unnecessary noise in the industry and confusing customers and confusing investors. So that was maybe the other side of that spectrum. But now, how do you go, if for lack of better terms, how do you go and rein in all that noise and quantify that into a solution somebody wants to consume? And that's where we had to optimize for engineering, essentially run faster on the engineering side, because no longer do we need to go into educate the market and do our marketing. Now we need to go into optimize for the user experience, because now we have to deliver our future vision from 2 years from today in 6 months. And that's kind of where the race was.
It's interesting, isn't it? It's interesting how the rate at which AI became so commonplace, obviously with with ChatGPT, how that kind of accelerated and also kind of pivoted what your original strategy was. I'm going back to the kind of your thoughts about marketing and your go-to-market strategy. And that's obviously for many companies, one of the first things they would look at, and many companies actually fail on that. And, you know, I noticed obviously you and how we're connected. You're very active out there on LinkedIn. You push a lot of content out. You're at events a lot. You know, how do you think your go-to-market and marketing strategy has changed over the kind of last 12 months from maybe the kind of pre-ChatGPT days?
I think I touched on it a little bit in my previous answer, but I'll just reiterate. Initially, we had to invest heavy into the market education, into marketing, LinkedIn campaigns. We can go down the list of the different mediums we're using. At the end of the day, when ChatGPT came and educated the market to what it is we're doing, and now we needed to go and to push more thought leadership content, we actually changed our strategy, and that actually created we had to over leverage on the engineering in order to catch up on the promise that AI held. So it kind of forced us in a way to reorganize our priorities and to actually cut down on the marketing, both headcount and expenses.
Interesting.
And actually leverage our product-led growth strategy, which was scheduled for a year out, and we had to do it in less than 6 months in order to go into essentially bridge expectation gap with the product experience.
Yeah, I find that really interesting how quickly you pivoted. And I suppose the reason I asked was the organizations, they will gain some market share, but actually then maybe not necessarily invest as much time and effort into those kind of continue to push their message out. But obviously you've kind of counteracted that with obviously the product piece, but also yourself, you're more active than many people I know on the social channels, the events. How much importance do you and your founder team place on these kind of in-person events? Because I noticed they've obviously come back with a vengeance post-COVID. Do you get a lot of kind of positive feedback and kind of confirmation doing the right thing through these events face-to-face?
I have the benefit of the tailwinds of being the first to market in the world of large language models for DevOps, or AI for DevOps. So I'm owning, at least to my benefit, a lot of that mind share today. So yesterday, for example, we had a webinar, a post-KubeCon webinar, where we had close to 1,500 registrations and close to 500 attendees, as an example.
Wow.
With very minimal spend. So that's a testament, number one, to my amazing team and my CMO and what he was able to accomplish during this time. But that's one aspect of it. The other aspect is there's a lot of interest in what we're doing because it's very early. And so all the early signs of a brand new market emerging in front of us. So people are looking for education. They're looking to to better understand a lot of the new concepts of large language models, how to use RAG techniques in building applications. And we can go down the list of which language models, what is a state machine, how do you go and create one, and how do you essentially go and weave that into your workflows. There's so much that goes into this. And what we had decided is to create almost like a university curriculum with different topics that we can start educating people on. And that's kind of our weekly goal, is to push content that's educational in nature, but also complex enough so people understand there's still a lot more for them to uncover. If they choose, they can go into a managed offering of our own, and then they could at least cut down on a lot of that learning curve, and be guided through it. And that's kind of where we're marrying our topics together with our solution.
I think it's really smart, and I think it's creating that community feel as well, because you know yourself, when you're first in somewhere, ultimately there's going to be other organizations, companies trying to do the same, and some of them will with far bigger budgets than probably that you were originally playing with. But it kind of probably reaffirms your decision to make that pivot pretty quickly to the product piece. The fact that you've had 1,500 registrations, 500 people actively engaged with your product on a webinar, I think that's should kind of testament to the fact you made that decision. And I suppose season 2 for us is a lot around kind of founder journeys. Obviously the AI space is hugely, interesting at the moment, but what advice do you think and tips would you offer those founders who are probably sat on a great idea and maybe working in a larger organization or any organization who may be coming up with against a problem and they've got the solution for that? Or, what advice would you offer them for the kind of how to get something out of their mind and into a fully fledged business?
I'll give a few friendly tips. Number one, don't fall in love with your idea. Don't drink your own Kool-Aid too much. Yes, you need to have confidence and strong conviction. So maybe I should start with that. Have a very strong conviction and have a confidence that you're going to have to kiss a lot of frogs before you're going to find that princess, right? Before you're going to get additional validation. And it's not always going to be straightforward, especially in today's economy where people can very easily give you positive reinforcement validation. But it's one thing to give you validation. Sounds like a great idea. It's a completely different level threshold, if you may, in order to get it to somebody's production or to get it for them to consume it and pay for it. So don't confuse interest with business. And I think that's one thing that most founders I would say fall in that trap. The second one is more so in line with don't be afraid to be very agile with their thought process. You can't be married to one idea. You're going to have all these many pivots and evolution of your product in a way that it could be even on a daily or hourly basis sometimes. And new information is going to come and you're going to need to know how to navigate that. The way I usually liken it to is a navigation system. You're in Waze, right? You're driving on a road. All looks clear. You're driving from the valley to San Francisco and you have 55 minutes on your GPS, but all of a sudden there's a pileup in front of you. How do you navigate? Where do you turn off on the road? Where do you know how to navigate around those roadblocks or the police on the side of the road, right? So how do you go and adjust your mindset, still having your North Star in place, and yet at the same time, not being too hard set on your original path or your original goal? You always have to adjust, especially in a world with large language models, AI. We have to adjust our mindset really on a daily basis, depending on what's just last week. I mean, I think we can all agree we almost had the most impressive company we've seen in decades almost completely implode. It seems like they're back on track.
Yeah.
$100 billion in value.
It's bizarre, 24 hours, isn't it?
It's so who am I to say that I can't make my adjustments accordingly?
Yeah, I think that's really, really helpful, really interesting. And I think you referenced something. The world of AI is changing every minute, every second, and actually putting all your eggs in one basket is a risky play. And I think what we saw is the nervousness that obviously the OpenAI implosion created in the market. And I think it's going to make people probably a bit more, how can I say it, a bit more measured in the risks that they take and the companies that they align with moving forward. I'm really, as I mentioned, I'm going to tag some demos in, but what can people expect to see? We have a lot of technical people listening and people within that kind of operational roles within infrastructure that would be interested to check you guys out. But what can they expect to see over the next 12, 18 months? I know whatever you can obviously publicly say, what kind of things can we expect to see?
I think I can share my vision pretty accurately, because it's been very consistent really from our foundation. We wanted to give our initial users an easy taste to the world of AI in operations, and the best way to do it is to give them, I don't know if the right word is a co-pilot experience, but kind of a human paired experience with an assistant that can go on to help them with the operations. Unlike, say, GitHub Copilot, that's a code completion tool, we're an operations completion tool. You can go and spin up Kubernetes deployment. You can go and check your logs. You can go and create resources, manipulate resources, attach policies very easily without knowing anything as a user. As an end user, you just have to express yourself. You can go and query your Jira. You can query your documents and have a conversation, interaction with your tools, resources, and data. So that's really for the end users. For the advanced users, we've given a custom profile that they can go and create, bring in all their own tools and scripts and solutions, and now have a full-on interaction. You can create a Terraform module, say an SQS of SQS queue using Terraform, and it will know how to do a plan and execute and really do that on your behalf with your input and your own custom instructions. So that's for more advanced users to be able to use it. And then finally, we also have a SDK. You can connect your own tools and bring in your own tools to interact with the system. So in a high level, what we've done is we've created an end-to-end solution that knows how to interact between the users and their tools in a way that you're really effectively replacing a lot of the human dependency in the loop, augmenting the human dependency in the loop, not necessarily replacing the end user. But over time, you're going to see that your users, the professionals who are managing your platforms and infrastructure, can concentrate on their highest and best use. And you may not have the same need for a robust headcount to support that same type of operation, meaning a leaner, more efficient operation on one hand, more job satisfaction for effectively the operators who get less of those repeat and toil type of requests coming in.
Exciting times, and I'm sure everyone who's listening to this and referencing the case studies and the demos, which we'll tag, will be excited to see that. So, no, thanks so much for your time this morning. It's been my pleasure to have you on, and really insightful. You offer some great advice, but also a great account to kind of what it takes to get a business to this point. So we're excited to see how you guys get on.
Thank you, Alex.
Thanks, Amit. Cheers.
All right. Cheers.